You've been very vocal over time about what has been going wrong, and some have even said, I'm sure you've seen this criticism of yourself as well, that they say you were very vocal during the tenure of former President Jacob Zuma. You spoke out about a lot of what was going wrong and what was happening at the time. But when he left office and President Cyril Ramaphosa came in, some say you became somewhat careful, cautious. Others go as far as saying timid. How do you respond?
Timid and cautious and all of those things are descriptions of behavior. They are absolutely right, by the way, to say once Jacob Zuma left, and really many people wanted him to leave because it didn't seem to, because the state capture thing, the Guptas and so on, you can tell me, we can talk about whether other things are just as bad. It was just so bad for people to know that their friendship to the highest authority in the land gives them license to willy-nilly decide who should do what in departments of interest to them. And that's really what was happening. The stories that were being told about cabinet ministers going to this Gupta house, this was really, really bad, and it was brazen. You had people like Themba Maseko losing jobs because they stood up, and not being defended and so on. So when Zuma left, the hope was that Tumamina, he came in with a fantastic slogan, was going to lift the thing, lift the morale, do away with state capture in a meaningful way. Generally, it's not easy to do badly when you take over from a situation that was as disastrous as in Zuma's time. But yes, he set up, somebody was correcting me that it's Zuma actually who set up the Zondo Commission and other commissions. Truth is, when Cyril came, he really gave it, he made it possible for them to function, approving budgets and so on and so forth. All of this to try and understand what state capture entailed and make sure that the people who were involved in this thing are dealt with through justice and so on. So I've heard people say that because of the knowing of what's the word, the NPA, for instance, was really decimated, and it had people, we remember the names. So whoever took over and wanted the NPA to carry out certain functions needed to get in new personnel and so on. All of that I agree, and it takes time. But there are two things here. One is, why do you, among other things, why do you keep people who have already been identified? You can't take them to court, but you don't need to keep them in your cabinet. Maybe they could be in the NEC because they're voted by the people. You're asking me now about the person who succeeded Zuma. Mm. I think he has missed the opportunity of getting competent people. And you never know your strength because no one is born, you don't go to a school to learn how to be a minister and so on. But there are people in the ANC, I've seen some of them in Parliament. The guy who was dealing with the public protector and so on, chairing it, I don't know him personally. I just thought those are the kinds of people you really need. But I think the reliance on people of shady characters, the keeping company with those people is what has cost the president the reputation that he had. But you're talking about supporting him. I thought he was working something out, and it was clear that it wasn't happening. But when crazy things did take place, like the stealing that took place, the corruption around the state with the COVID,
the PPE.
The PPEs. Mm. Yeah, the sanction that ought to happen is, if you do nothing else, forget what the courts do, is to say, this one must be out of here. We'll deal with them, because no one is entitled to a position or so. But I think the president's greatest failure has been to hope you can negotiate things with people who are essentially out to destroy. You will not renew the ANC with some of the people there, and he ought to know that.
What does it say then about his leadership?
It says it would be much better if he stiffened his spine and decided, I think this is what we've been saying since we started here, to take firm action, firm decisions.
So do you think then that those performance assessments then should have been made public? Because, they're saying now that they won't be making them public because they don't want these assessments to be used as political tools. So listening to what you're saying then about the scorecards, so should these assessments then be made public?
Yes, they should be made public. They should. You are accountable to the public. And if you somebody is assessing, so you take this function from the Mail and Guardian, or these people who at the end of the year look at how each one of these. It's nice, but it really can't have the substance, that the depth based on the performance of agreed targets. This is what, and it's very easy. We were supposed to achieve 5 objectives, this, that, and the other. How many have been, and what were the difficulties, and so on. The public is entitled to have that information.
So before I get back to you then, if this is what is being said about the ANC president, has the new dawn failed?
Has the
new dawn failed?
The new dawn is yet to come. That's the problem. That's what we're discussing here. The public has not seen the dawn. There are good steps that have been taken, but ultimately, whatever you do is tied to an objective that you agreed. I want by a certain time for the GDP to be at 3.5%, and I'll get it there by doing A, B, C, D. So no, I mean, you talk about the new dawn when we have no lights, because ESCOM is not functioning. When we're being threatened with a water program, there's a crisis, it need not happen. This need not happen. If I was in charge, I would take the blame for these things happening, because I would want to find out from my charges, why are we about to get a water crisis? What new thing has arisen that would have prevented a proper process that would ensure there's good maintenance of systems, etc., etc.
Do you resign from the ANC because you feel that your voice has been loud over time about what has been going wrong, it's not being listened to? Or do you think there was simply no other alternative for you? Is it because of what you've been talking about? And I know as the Veterans League, you've been very vocal, but is it because you simply just don't see any other thing, any other way out within the ANC right now to try and correct itself?
This is a very difficult question, which I must answer. If I thought there was still a chance to change things, I would look at what are those, what do we need to do to achieve those changes. I've looked at some of those, we've mentioned some of them. Regain the confidence of the people, make sure that unquestionably you've got competent people, performing people, and so on. And this, what was you saying? This thing that they are not, that they are withholding from the public. What is it called?
The performance assessment.
The performance assessment is such a good tool, and I would push it to the public and say, this is what I'm planning to do, and this is how the people who are charged with that are performing, and so on. So yes, there is. It's depressing, it's frustrating, because you can't work on excuses for not achieving things that are achievable. Those who don't achieve really ought to be given opportunities elsewhere. We've got a serious problem with policing. How I wish young people like this would be brought into force, IT people and so on. A person who is in charge to understand what policing is about, how sophisticated these people are and so on. I wouldn't like to read in the paper that 4,000 people who have been charged are still part of the police force. There's something seriously wrong with that. They've been charged with corruption and they continue to in employment. These are things that can't just happen and you fold your hands. So you can go into every area and say, I would have tweaked and changed forces, redeployed. I'm not interested in taking anybody's job away, but remove them from where they're unable to do the job. That has not happened. That's why we're here.
Have you heard, though, from the leadership of the ANC since you penned your letter?
No, I haven't. And that's another thing. People who like me have been saying, you should have waited and gotten a response. I did not want you. Who am I to want to talk all of you? I sent my letter to the SG's office himself and the PA. By the evening, I did not send it, believe you me, even to my fellow veterans. And it was difficult because at a certain time I would have wanted them not to read in the media that has happened, if this thing went to the media at all. This thing it just opened up. Every WhatsApp group had this thing happening and so on. I wanted to protect the narrative around this. And I thought I'll be lucky to get you guys and others to listen to why I did it. Maybe if there had been a chance of engagement, we would, I'm not saying I would have changed my mind, but at least one would understand how we proceed going forward with this thing.
So you haven't said anything to you?
I saw late at night, I think, the SG trying to do so. I really, by then I was very comfortable, but I just read the opening thing, what's happened now. But it wasn't a long thing. I don't want to blame them. This thing has just overcome everybody and so on.
What does that look like? Because, and I'm borrowing from the letter you're saying, I've come to the realization that my time and energies would be better spent elsewhere. It comes at a time when there's speculation that you may be working with Roger Jadin. Is that the case?
No. Roger Jadin, I've spoken to many of these people, including some independents, including people who have been around. To the extent, I speak to Mavuso Msimang before we came here with very many. I don't want to be dropping too many names. I listen to the people. If they are seeking my advice, I really give genuine advice about what the limitations are, what the opportunities are, and so on. I am not going to join a party. Even in the ANC, until I got to the Veterans League thing, I've always just been a person who has been in the ANC for a long time. A little too old now to be, even if, and I'd be happy really if people thought there was value in listening to me, if I do have anything to offer. Any one of the people, any organization, any person in that space, but I've got greater priorities and priority.
So do those priorities stay in the confines of politics, or I know you say you want to ensure there's accountability and everything else, but I can't help but say, where do you go? Do you go towards civil society? Do you start your own thing? Do you go become part of a political party? Because I'm sure a lot of people want to know what's coming.
You're giving me an opportunity to punt a relative there is a project by some people. There's a person called Roger Msimang, who was assigned. He's long past now. He is one person who was assigned by the ANC when it was still called South African National Native Council to document the problems that people who were affected by the Native Lands Act in 1913. You know, we know that it was bad, they took out back out, but this guy documented that. There's an archive of what it was all about. Huge contribution. He was the person who wrote the constitution of the ANC. He was the head lawyer. He had trained in the UK, actually the first black person to be the solicitor of England and Wales. But when he came back here, he didn't do what he had been trained for, immersed himself into the ANC, wrote for the paper Bantu Bato, which was all of them. We would like to profile that person. I want to go to the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture and say to them, does he fit into this thing? I want to go to rugby people, they say he was an outstanding rugby player, and all of that. So I would like, that's a handful in itself. Doing that would occupy my time until the 13th hour.